welcome to another episode of Test, Optimize, and Scale. It's a privilege to have Erin Holloway with us here today, president of FundAmerica by Prime Trust. And we've already been talking for a bit here. Excited to see where the conversation could go. Erin, I thought we could kick off today's discussion with a bit about yourself, a bit about your history.
Sure. Thanks so much. I really appreciate the time together with you, Jason. So again, I'm Erin Holloway. I didn't start in this space. I have a very different path to how I got into the crowdfunding world. I started in traditional banking. So imagine I was a senior in college coming out of Indiana University, the Kelley School of Business, and times were rough for getting jobs straight out of college in the early 90s. And in my sorority, there were 25 seniors, and only 3 of us had jobs. And I was lucky enough to be recruited by what became JP Morgan, a bank in Chicago. And the recruiter had been an interrogator for the CIA. So you can imagine what that interview process was like. He recruited heavily because he had been a graduate of Indiana as well, and was brought into their credit analyst training program to then become a banker, traditional banker in the Chicago area. So went through that program while I got my MBA at Loyola University, and became a traditional banker, which I'm going to touch on why that experience was important, especially now as I get in the crowdfunding space as I go along. Did a lot of treasury services, foreign exchange, helped launch their first online internet foreign exchange product, because internet products were very new. You were lucky you could get dial-up reporting at a bank at the time. So doing a true internet product was a big deal, and helping launch that for the foreign exchange team. And then just went back into international treasury and spent quite a few years, about 20 years at JP Morgan in various roles. Worked a lot with financial institutions, did a lot of the international financial institutions and correspondent banking, but always a lot in the treasury space. And then had spent a couple of my last years at JP Morgan in this little niche partner that they had bought in the tech space. And it was electronic invoicing. I had wanted to try the tech space, and I thought, this is a great way to do it. I'm still within the bank, and it was only about 120 people at the time. And that's what they did, electronic invoicing. But it was founded it was really interesting. It was founded in the early 2000s when that was very, very new. But I loved it. And then I actually made a move to a company called Ariba, which was the big company in electronic invoicing. And 6 weeks later, they were purchased by SAP. So then I became, it was from big company to temporarily to little company, and then right back to big company again. And I spent the last 9 years at SAP working with their networks, working with their, they had a working capital product line that I spent a lot of time in, helped develop a new payment product. It was basically like building a better mousetrap from a security and compliance perspective in regards to having bank account data and putting firewalls in place to secure both parties in a financial transaction. So that was pretty cool and exciting. And then these last couple of years that I was at SAP was working on their global business network, bringing buyers and suppliers together in that entire ecosystem of what it takes to buy goods and services that need to get shipped around the world. So a lot of the things that we've been seeing lately in the supply chain world is directly affected by how the buyers and sellers work together. And that was the software that I was working with and developing on it to put together a global network. And then I decided to, take a step into the crowdfunding space. As I like to say, it's a very shallow pool we swim in, and our career paths tend to double helix and cross each other several times. And so a dear friend of mine who I'd worked with at JP Morgan is the CEO of Prime Trust, Tom Pagler. And he had asked me if I would come in and work with FundAmerica on the crowdfunding side. So it was kind of the happy marriage of my 2 previous experiences. My first act as a banker and in treasury and securities, as well as then in the tech space with networking and bringing people together. And that's how I got into the crowdfunding space. Now, what's interesting, when I say I want to go back to my first days as a banker, There's a lot of valuable lessons that I'm utilizing now in the crowdfunding space, and it's kind of exciting to be on the other end of this now because I was that banker who said no. I was the person who looked at, an idea and saw that there was no equity, right? We had the three C's we worked on, right? It was, collateral, credit, and character. And a lot of people didn't have collateral or credit. They might have had character and an idea, but if you didn't have two of the three C's, we said no, right? Because you were beholden back then to one banker or one VCs, and you got a lot of no's, right? If you didn't have that, you didn't have the equity, right? Which is exactly what people need. We only gave loans to people who were low risk, and you're low risk if you have the three C's. But that's not what crowdfunding is about, right? Crowdfunding is about lowering the risk and diversifying the risk among the many because the risk is limited. And it's not beholden to one banker or a handful of VCs to help you with that. It's open to the masses. It's open to everyone. So that's what I love about it, is that it's come full circle. It is an entirely new ecosystem that we get to work with, which then opens up all these doors to the people that I used to say no to. Now the market says yes to them, and their projects get off the ground. Their companies expand and grow, and new ideas are born every day because of the crowdfunding scene.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more there, Erin. I think the market does get to decide. We're no longer beholden to just that one angel investor, that one VC. I've been part of a high volume of meetings on the startup side in years past, on the issuer side. So definitely resonate there. And thank you for going in depth about your history there. From Indiana to JP Morgan, and one of the students, the friend base you had to first get placed in a role there, onwards to the MBA at Loyola. Really exciting to hear about your experience with some of the early internet products, some of the electronic invoicing systems, and then eventually to Ariba, which turned into SAP. I feel like I walked down these different chapters with you. Thank you for that detailed background and how it moved into global business and eventually working with Tom at Prime Trust, who you met through JP Morgan. And we actually shared a story before on how you guys met on stage, through a speaking event. And just really fascinating. I'm always interested to hear how everyone got involved in the space of regulation crowdfunding, Reg A Plus, various types of vehicles, surrounding it as well too. And love how you pointed out that it really is this new ecosystem. And curious to see, you guys play such a massive role working with portals, working with issuers, countless partners on all sides, from tech to transfer agents to broker dealers. Where's the space going? And with your experience, over at JP Morgan, where is everything going to be in 3 years, 5 years, from a broad sense? No exact answers to this question, but would love to get your thoughts on it.
Yeah, and there is no crystal ball, right?
Yep.
Um, and the economist in me always prefaces everything by saying ceteris paribus, all other things being held equal and constant, right?
Sure.
No major, catastrophic events on a global scale or an economic basis. Assuming that things continue to roll along. Um, there's been a lot of buzz about the ATS space, and for good reason, right? Because even though crowdfunding, technically started in 12, really got rolling in 16, and even further earlier this spring with the expansion of the limits that offerings could go up to. Um, the forgotten person in the process is the investor, right? We now have all of these great opportunities and methods by which people can raise equity, get their projects and their companies off the ground or expanded. But then what happens once people have invested? What do they do with that security? What do they do with that stake in the company? Where does that go? And the private space, hasn't always been easy. It's not easy. The easier you make it to sell, in the the private security space, the easier it is to buy and the more people want to buy because they have that flexibility, right? If it's difficult, maybe they're not so no interest in it because they're like, oh, how am I going to unload this when I want to unload it? How am I going to liquidate? If they have a way to liquidate, if they have a market to do that in, it makes them much more amenable to getting it into the first place, right? So the expansion of that, and it is taking off. Um, there's a lot more room to grow, obviously, but I think what we're going to see is we're going to see scale as crowdfunding continues to gain momentum and more offerings are opened and then closed. More and more securities will then be available on the secondary market, potentially through the ATS space. Now, I think there are a lot of people trying to get into it, and they don't have a whole lot of volume within that space right now. So I think some are going to fall away because they're just never going to get critical mass.
Sure.
And we might have some consolidation in the space, right? That naturally happens. M&A activity naturally happens in a new and expanding space, as that kind of gets going and people start to band together, for the greater good and to get that volume going. So I think that's really the next big wave, that will start to really take off. And then I really think, with the crypto being an option with how people invest, right? Having another additional way to get assets into a crypto offering, that's going to gain popularity as well. And then, additionally, on the other side of the house, I think you're going to see a lot of more people putting crypto in their IRAs,
Mm.
right, in a wealth management side, because it's building their portfolio and looking long term as to where is my money going to be, whether it's in securities or whether it's in crypto or traditional investment vehicles. But I think we're going to see some really good traction in those particular spaces coming up in these next couple of years.
Yes, and that's what we've really been able to identify over the past year and a half is these different retail investors participating in the public-private markets, alternative investments such as cryptocurrency, and I know that steals headlines quite a bit. We're familiar with some of the groups putting IRA options around those type of vehicles, around digital assets, and I've been pointing at this statement a lot where there's a lot of blurring at the moment of what are the public markets, what are the private public, what are alternative investments, what's above water, what are the strategies around it. So I anticipate a lot more education for investors. Glad you pointed that out. I think that's definitely the focus. And when I think about what different groups in the space could do to kind of lock arms and make success more available for everyone involved, from the issuers to the investors, and then all of the service providers, all of the different tech stacks involved. I think it really is that emphasis on the investor, having more investor success stories with secondary markets, everything involving ATS, as you mentioned. And I know you guys are at the forefront of those conversations. And I want to familiarize the audience a bit more with Prime Trust and mainly FundAmerica. I know you guys do a lot of work with portals, some of the biggest. I don't know what could be shared, what can't, but I just wanted to give a bit more of an introduction to FundAmerica, if you wanted to dive in there a little bit about everything you guys are doing in the space.
Sure, and a little history about us as well. FundAmerica was started in 2012, so we're definitely pioneers in the space as the crowdfunding kind of world opened up and became to be. Um, and we were actually the beginning of what is now Prime Trust. So in 2017, we expanded into the world of crypto, and we actually are one company now with two products, right? So we're Prime Trust, as the overarching company, and we're FundAmerica by Prime Trust, which is the crowdfunding arm of the company. And the lines have blurred, as you've mentioned, between kind of our worlds. We've kind of come full circle in essence, in being in the crowdfunding space, standing up the solutions with the portals and the individual issuers as well. Um, and then it goes into that, but then now what kind of space, right? Which is then where the Prime Trust comes into the space, where those those issuers, they need the custody services that we offer. They need the crypto services that we offer on the other side of the house. And so it's kind of come full circle in terms of what we're able to offer. We do work with platforms, portals, broker dealers, individual issuers, all the regs. So we are definitely a place, regardless of how you come in the door, as I like to say, right? There's a room for you in the house, right? We have a room for you in the house. Um, and it's been exciting to watch the expansion in all parts and to see what's popular, right? Where are we gaining traction? And it's been interesting, especially during COVID, to see the offerings that are coming up. Seeing continued interest in clean technology, distilleries. A lot of people have gotten into beer and craft breweries and like moonshine type of things, and that's become very popular during the COVID times. Movie making, which is something that we were a bit starved for during COVID. But it's been interesting to see kind of these new waves and where we're seeing peaks in the industries that are coming towards us to do their offerings. That's been really exciting lately.
And I think we're working with a lot of the same verticals, industries, space. I like how you mentioned it reflects the past year and a half, some of the shutdown type mentalities that everyone's been experiencing. The lift in distilleries, I think, is a great example of community investment opportunities where individuals are not only participating for a potential upside down the line, but for the impact in their immediate proximity. To be able to say, hey, I'm part of that. That is something that I'm a shareholder in, has been a commonality when we've been taking different focus groups of investors, trying to figure out target audience research for issuers. So that's definitely stood out to us as well too. And wanted to see a bit further, in regards to portals. I know these are FINRA regulated. They're working with the SEC for Reg CF. That is where the majority of issuers are focusing. They're able to launch a campaign that uses a proven process. They're not creating a new
That's right.
landing page. The checkout process shows conversion rates. They're also tapping into an existing audience base. So they're
Right.
able to say, hey, once we get investors, there'll be more people seeing the traction. And therefore, it's an attractive place, not just for Reg CF, but for Reg A Plus campaigns. Then there's a whole world of launching this on your own site. As you mentioned, you guys work with issuers. Everyone's invited. And if they have a large enough audience or are able to drive enough traffic, that there's very strong benefits to doing it outside of the portal. And so FundAmerica is the technology powering all of this in the background, if I'm not mistaken. And as you're breaking
That's
out
right.
here, what have some of the challenges been over the past few years? What are you guys most excited about with some of those relationships with portals and issuers? Is there anything that will take us to the next stages that is part of the FundAmerica whiteboard today?
Yeah. I think it's scale. I mean, we are on the cusp of explosion. I really think so. The momentum has been building. And I really feel like from what we're seeing, especially with our portal partners, um, the exponential growth. I mean, for example, Start Engine made an announcement earlier this year that they had done as much business in the first half of 2021 as they did in all of 2020 last year, right? So just so many more people coming on board, so many more people not afraid to come on board and to try, right? And I liken it to a crawl, walk, run, fly methodology, right? So the safe bet is to start if you're going to do your very first Reg CF is to go with a portal platform type of solution, right? Again, as you mentioned, Jason, to get that visibility to existing investors who are familiar with crowdfunding investment, they're looking for new opportunities. They've got a whole. It's almost like going to the mall, right? We talk about going to the mall. They've got all these stores that they can take a look at and see what they're interested in buying. And so it's that's the safe place for a lot of CFs. And then maybe they go on and maybe they do a Reg A or maybe they host their own. And they do have their own landing page, et cetera, right? The crawl, walk, run, fly. But again, as you know, we talk about building momentum, right? It's because of the cyclicality of where we are in the space. You know, we've had those offerings open, close, you know, re-up with maybe an additional series, people getting experience, right? Investors getting experience, issuers are getting experience. Um, you know, it's becoming more mainstream, right? This is not becoming you know, it's not something that's so unique and special in portfolios any longer. People are looking to expand their portfolios, and when we look at our investors that are interested in it, right, a lot of it's, you know, younger generations that, as you mentioned, want to feel part of what they're investing in. They want to feel good about their investment, and they're looking for high yield and you know, something that gives them that sense of community, right? They're investing both for returns, but also because there's an emotional investment as well. And they're not quite as interested in, you know, traditional, you know, value stocks and having the patience to wait for those long-term growth, you know, dividends to yield fruit, right? They're interested in something that's happening fast, high growth, high yield. If I pick a, you know, a real winner, that, you know, maybe I'll invest in five, and one of them is going to be that real winner with explosive growth, and I'm going to see, not 10% growth, I'm going to see 100% growth or 500% growth. You know, that's exciting to them, and people are looking for that. I mean, yields have been in the tank for a long time, a long time. I mean, Fed funds is 0.025, right? I mean, 25 basis points. I mean, we're not exactly in a high yield. It doesn't make any sense to, you know, keep your money in the bank any longer. You've got to place it someplace where it's going to work for you. And you need to look, you know, at diversification and putting some in that potential high growth, high yield type of opportunity. This is the perfect way to do it. You can do it in small amounts. Doesn't have to be a ton, right? You can diversify within those groups and really build your portfolio in an exciting new way that was never an option before now. So again, looking at the change in a younger generation, it's really comfortable with it, right? They're comfortable with the crypto space. They're comfortable with the crowdfunding space. They want that diversification of their portfolio, and they're eager for higher yields and faster growth.
Yeah, and we definitely point to that high risk, high return section of the portfolio when mapping out the target audiences, and whatever percentage is appropriate there, depending on how aggressive that individual investor and hopefully their wealth manager or someone at their local bank is consulting them on, you know, their age and their overall goals. We were actually mapping out some numbers internally about how these organizations grow, and if it's a Reg CF valued at $10 million, $20 million. I like using ones and zeros. So if it's 10 million and they move to 100 million, if they become a unicorn and it's 100x or even 10 billion and there's 1,000x, and pointing at some different companies, pointing at some different examples where we've seen this occur over the past few years. We've had clients that were fintech apps and are now in the unicorn space, and talked about early team members that, and how their portfolios probably look at the moment based on options. But overall, that is what these investors are looking for. And again, I see an experienced investor in there too, someone who wants to be involved, wants to be part of the ride, wants to have their hand in a high growth industry. But ultimately, at the root of it, if an individual is able to tap into this, what that means for marketing, that's what we want to be able to speak to, of course, compliantly, no forward-looking statements or anything like that, but want to be able to tap into that discussion, into that potential, at least in terms of trigger words, and being able to paint that things have this type of horizon ahead. So if we're able to start that, spark it in the target audience's eyes in an advertisement or a piece of content, if we're able to take them down a funnel and through an offering page, if they see the founder speak at an investor webinar or anything along those lines, it creates a process that in many cases can be stronger than the experience they would see offline. I do a lot of these offline online analogies, and back to those pitch discussions you had years back, and looking at I liked the character part. credit and collateral, looking at these different boxes that you want to check, that can all be displayed digitally now. And we could do content pieces on each component of that, content on the team, on the partnerships, on use of proceeds, have everything in further depth, and a funnel that, as you guys are building with the portals or with the issuers directly, that can support thousands of investors participating in a very small window of time. So without going too much more in my background, some listeners have heard this. To me, that's just a massive evolution to what I saw with early stage companies and trying to secure capital in years past. We're also seeing investors come on as super customers, super users, super ambassadors in many cases. So it just seems like a win across the board for everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. And we talk about that crawl, walk, run, fly. We are running. We are running right now, and we are going to be flying very soon as an industry.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely. And I want to get into some different insights, some different recommendations that you could potentially provide listeners. We have a lot of founders that listen in, and I should add portals. We've worked with almost 10 portals as clients on their issuer, on their investor acquisition campaigns. So that is part of the discussion here. But a large part of our percentage is listeners is founders, also marketers, and some equity crowdfunding professionals from all different sides of the table. When an issuer is launching a campaign or any campaigns going out of the gate, what are some things that they should test? What are some, whether that's from a marketing standpoint, elements to their page, bringing in their internal audiences before going out, or anything to structure the deal? What are some things they should definitely look at before going live?
Yeah, I'm a big fan of preparation.
Okay.
Right? You want to be prepared, you want to be polished, and you want to be professional. Right? Like those are the three things is making sure that you've got your ducks in a row. The plan has to be not flawless because there are a lot of unknowns, right, as you go into this, but it has to be really well thought out, really well thought out. Your budget, how much do you have, for your marketing campaign? Do you have followers and customers teed up? Have you tested the market with test groups and gotten feedback with surveys about how interested they'd be, in terms of amount of investment? Where's that sweet spot for starting that minimum offering amount, in terms of, where are you going? Having your financial plan in place. I cannot emphasize that enough. Having your financial plan in place, whether you need a prospectus or not, knowing what that's going to be, and laying that out. I am not a fan of just like let's see how it goes, right? I don't like failed offerings at all. I want every offering to be a success, to reach their maximum amount, to have, happy investors who see the return that they're looking for, and then have awesome projects or expansions in their company. And so I think that preparation is key, and just leaving nothing to doubt. Turn over every rock, like I consider it like a Rubik's Cube. Keep changing it and keep looking at it from all different sides until you've got it exactly where you need. You've solved the Rubik's Cube and you're ready to go, and have that plan so that you can have a successful launch. That's the best thing that we could ask for, is making sure we get to success with every single issue or every single offering.
And it all starts with that plan. Planning is everything. It is the roadmap. It's saying, here's the goal. Here's the exact path we're going to take to get there. Yes, there are tests, but those are just assumption until they're validated, and then we can take it to further levels. But like you, I'm not a fan of, hey, let's just put it up and see what happens.
Yeah, let's see what happens. I mean, hope is not a strategy, I like to say, Jason.
Yeah.
Hope is not a strategy.
Yeah.
Right? You can't skip steps. You just can't. You cannot skip steps, especially when you've got regulation in place, and you're talking about people's money.
Mm-hmm.
And even though a lot of the minimums amounts are fairly small, it's other people's money.
Yes.
So you have to take that very, very seriously, in being respectful of what you're offering them. There has to be value there. There absolutely has to be value to the investor.
Sure. And we'll see it from the marketing side. different points from founders of we're just interested in investors. We're just interested in performance. We don't really want to focus on a plan. Where for me, it's fundamentals. If I look at professional athlete, it's the practice. It's all the years of work that allowed them to perform at those levels. Same's true with the top Reg A Plus campaigns.
That's right. They make it look easy because they put all the preparation in behind the scenes.
Yeah, exactly. And it's a commonality. When I look at those top campaigns, they all had a plan. They all knew what they were going to roll out with first and where they were going to go if it worked, what to optimize towards if it didn't work.
Yeah.
I like focusing on optimization. Not everything works right out of the gate. Like you, I don't like failed deals. When I hear about success percentages in equity crowdfunding or on entrepreneurship as a whole, I don't think it's a number we should all be accepting as much as looking to problem solve, looking to see higher rates of being able to get to the right investors at the right time with the right deals and bringing the right deals out of the table at that. What are some things to look at in terms of optimization? If a campaign doesn't work right out of the gate, what's the best way to approach that in your experience?
Yeah. Well, as part of the plan is you have to have a plan to pivot. Part of the plan is, okay, what's our 30, 60, 90 day? What are we looking at? If we haven't reached something, how do we pivot? Right? Because I don't like the idea of losing fast. Right? I like the idea of having a pivot.
Yes.
Right? Let's find a different direction. Maybe we've been targeting the wrong audience. Maybe that didn't get to the level that we thought it was going to get to. What's our plan B? So you need to have a plan B ready so that you can pivot on it, and possibly a C.
Yeah.
Right? Possibly a C. To have that in place. So especially with readjust, like what if do we have additional marketing dollars if we are marketing the wrong place and we need to market someplace else? How do we do outreach and communication to our followers or our customers to increase it, right? So there are those waves that you need to have planned, but if they haven't been working, you have to have a pivot.
That's how I define good marketing talent, by the way, and we're generally on the front line of performance here, is problem-solving abilities, pivoting, techniques. It's not about when you set it up and everything just hits its goals. Sure, that does happen, but more times than not, those pivots are required. Even with our campaigns, we'll work with some groups post-fundraising. I mentioned a fintech app earlier, same type of concept. We'll work on their round and, furthermore from there. And the performance plateaus at some point. So we have to get creative at those stages. And we'll put together A/B tests, variants. So we'll say, hey, here's 4 audiences, here's 10 audiences. Let's see what's working best. Then we have multiple creatives running for each. We want to be able to pinpoint pockets of performance that we could scale, phase out non-producers, but always be coming to the table with new options. We never want to have our hands tied. We never want to be stuck to what worked last month and we don't know what to do now. So I love the plan C in there.
But you have to. You can't just throw your hands up in the air and be like, "Oh wow, didn't work." Hope is not a strategy. That is not a plan.
That's correct. And like you said, at that point, you have a responsibility to investors, to partners, especially if the round hasn't closed yet. How are you going to get to those next milestones now that you have all these new shareholders, now that you have all these new people as part of your team? How are you going to be able to get to critical mass?
And every single investor that put their money, in your offering wants you to succeed. They want you to win big.
Yes.
They want you to hit that mark and then be able to run with your project or your expansion, or your new idea, whatever it happens to be. They want that for you so badly, which is why they're entrusting you with their financial investment.
Absolutely. And a lot of the times we point towards those investors for future marketing, whether we're talking about how many individuals have participated in the campaign, without saying terms. We have some different compliance we need to follow there, but we point towards the audience size. Also, we'll reach out to investors, see if there's anyone they can bring to the table, but by re-engaging
Mm-hmm.
them with content, we'll see 10% to 30% of investors
Yeah.
on Reg CF campaigns participate
Up their
multiple
investments.
times.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Exactly. And not everyone thinks about that either. We've had groups say, no, we don't want to market to our investors any further, where I've seen them to be the most
Oh,
valuable
you'll get an
incentive.
uplift. Absolutely, you'll get an uplift.
Hmm. And we're,
Because there are some investors that, they're like in for a dime, in for a dollar.
yep.
I want this to succeed.
Hmm. Like you said, they want it so bad. It's part of their interest as well too. They want to see their
Yeah.
position grow. They want to be part of an organization that's thriving. So I generally find they can be very strong ambassadors. I don't like to overstate it when talking about marketing performance and how these investors could be responsible for more growth, how the lifetime
Yeah.
value could be higher. But we're certainly seeing that happen. Also should mention that we're working with some groups on their fourth round at this point, and they've done
Yeah.
8 figures of funding. They are very instrumental in the growth of the next campaign. And a lot of people are saying always be raising in the industry. We're fans of that methodology. So I would not underestimate the value of the investors.
Yeah. And I always say your customers and your investors are your best salespeople,
It's a good way to put
right?
it.
They truly are. If they have a good experience with you, if they like your product or your service or what you're doing, they are your best salesmen.
Mm-hmm. Couldn't agree more. And speaking to best salesmen, how do these campaigns scale? We hear about Reg A Plus campaigns that are passing the $50 million mark. We hear about Reg A Plus campaigns in some of the portals that are 20, 25 million. Monitored a panel recently where I think everyone had over 20 million. In your experience, how do these campaigns scale? I know it's a word that you like to use. Likewise, between me and my team as well. What are some tactics that listeners can use to scale their campaigns?
Again, it starts with that foundation of the plan,
Mm-hmm.
right? You have to have the plan, and again, speed is of the essence, right? Speed almost equals scale, right? Because the faster you start and you get that momentum, the further the growth can go. It's often, I mean, and Jason, you've seen this. I mean, I think like, what's the average, for a super successful campaign? It's like they can hit their mark by, is it day 36, I believe? Like, that's massive success, right? If you can hit your goal and succeed it by, in the 36, 37 day mark. For some reason, that number six in my head is being like the magic day
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
for doing it. But building that build up in advance so that investors are ready to go and you have a fast start,
Mm-hmm.
right? You want a fast start to your campaign. And again, like you said, having your marketing waves ready to go, timed out appropriately, not being afraid to go back to those initial investors,
Yep.
right? To go a little bit deeper and to get that 10% uplift perhaps. Um, all of those things are so important. But yeah, that fast start is the best way to, not guarantee, right, but to increase your odds, let's say, for getting that scale going.
Sure. Great note there. It's not always mentioned on the show here early, here as well, but get a fast start. Get started early. That social proof speaks loudly. Momentum is investable. If an investor gets to a prospective offering and they come back the next day, there's substantially more people who've participated. The next week, they've raised hundreds of thousands of dollars more in some of these campaigns, 7 figures more the next time that they visit. It speaks
Yeah.
very loudly. It's that line around the block feeling from a digital
Yeah.
standpoint. You don't want the empty restaurant sensation where people are questioning the deal. Hey, this looks good, but how come no one's getting involved? You want to start fast. You want to be able to show social proof, big part of digital marketing, and be able to build off that, be able to compound to snowball throughout the next stages.
Yeah, absolutely. Couldn't agree more.
Mm-hmm. Well, excellent, Erin. There's so many great recommendations. You're a wealth of knowledge here. Any final notes, any final thoughts that you want to leave listeners with?
The one thing is FundAmerica is here for the market, right? We are here for all types of issuers, platforms, broker dealers, whoever needs our infrastructure to stand up your offering. So whether you are a portal who needs that behind the scenes infrastructure, or you're an issuer who needs an Invest Now button on your website, we are absolutely here to help you get to that stage and have a successful launch. We're actually redesigning all of our interfaces, both our dashboard, our Invest Now button, our FundAmerica.com website. It's going to have a very fresh new look and feel. All of our information is out there. I encourage everyone to go take a look at it to get the information that you need. And from there, if you need help, it says, connect me, contact us, connect us with a salesperson who is here to help you, and we will absolutely help you with a successful offering.
Amazing. And my team and I are very excited to check out the new 2022 look and feel. We're looking forward to the next stages of growth for the industry. We know you and your team are going to be at the forefront of that. Excited to see where it can go for everybody.
Thanks so much, Jason. We're excited to go into this next year and this next stage of growth with you.
Excellent, excellent. Well, thank you, Erin. I really appreciate the time today. Have immensely enjoyed the conversation. I'm sure listeners are going to be going through that funnel here as well. Want to thank everybody for tuning in, and we'll see everyone next time.